1470. Among the mountains of Thessaly, a bell rings one last time in a valley that will never hear it again. Inside the convent of St. Catherine, 23 women kneel in prayer. Their lips move in unison, forming words they have recited every morning for years, but this morning the words taste different. They taste of ash, of farewell. Outside the walls the sky is blood red. Not from the dawn, but from the banners of an empire that has already conquered entire kingdoms. The Ottoman army advances, flowing like a river of steel and fire. Sister Eleni, the abbess, clutches a crucifix 3 generations old. Her hands tremble, but not from fear. She knows what is about to happen. They all know. What none of them could imagine is that death would have been a mercy, because what happened afterward was not written in any history book. It was buried, erased, hidden beneath centuries of silence. Until today. What the Ottomans did to these women was not just a conquest. It was something far more calculated, something that historians are only now beginning to discover. The question is not whether you can handle the truth. It is whether you are willing to remember it. To understand what happened to these nuns, you must understand the machine that consumed them. 17 years earlier, in 1453, Constantinople had fallen. The jewel of Christendom, the city that had stood for over 1,000 years, had vanished in 53 days of cannons and blood. The Basilica of Hagia Sophia was stripped of its crosses within hours. Its mosaics were covered with plaster, its bells melted down. Within a week, the call to prayer echoed from its domes. Sultan Mehmed II declared it a mosque, not because he needed another place of worship, because he understood something most conquerors do not understand. A people is not defeated by killing them. They are defeated by erasing their identity. The Ottomans did not conquer only territories. They conquered identities. When Mehmed looked west toward the scattered remains of the Byzantine Empire, he saw wounds that refused to heal. Every church still ringing, every monastery still standing, every cross casting shadows on conquered soil were declarations of defiance, and every nun praying in Latin was a living reminder that faith could survive armies. So the Sultan made a decision. If they will not convert, it will not be through massacre. Massacre creates martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs about the dead become immortal. No, the Ottomans had perfected something far more elegant, something that left no songs, no stories, no memories, erasure. The convent of St. Catherine, perched on a hill in Thessaly, far from any garrison or ally, was about to become another case study. But these women were not warriors. They were women who had spent their entire lives in silence and prayer. Their weapons were rosaries. Their armor was faith. Sister Eleni had been abbess for 12 years. Sister Magdalena was 19 years old, her hands still bearing calluses from working her father's fields. Sister Theodora was 70 years old, having survived 2 emperors and more wars than she could count. But none of them had ever faced anything like this. The first cannonball strikes just after dawn. It hits the bell. The sound is apocalyptic. Stone explodes in the air. Iron screams against iron. The bell that has rung every morning for 140 years splits in half. Sister Eleni does not scream. She stands with the crucifix raised high and begins to sing. The Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. One by one, the others join her. 23 voices rising against the roar of an empire, but empires do not listen to songs. By noon, the doors are shattered. Ottoman soldiers enter the courtyard not with swords drawn, but with parchments. They enter as clerks, not as conquerors, counting, recording, cataloguing. Because for the Ottomans, these women are not people, they are resources, in translator reads from a parchment. By order of Sultan Mehmed II, all subjects of conquered territories must submit to the authority of the Sublime Porte. Those who convert will be granted protection. Those who refuse will face the consequences of rebellion. Sister Eleni steps forward. Her face is calm, almost serene. Tell your Sultan that we have already given our lives to a king. We have nothing more to surrender. The official in charge, Hassan Pasha, whose name appears in Ottoman registers from 1470, does not respond with anger. He responds with a smile. Because he knows something the sisters do not yet understand. The Ottomans have perfected the art of bending people without killing them. That night, the women are locked in their chapel. No food, no water, only darkness and the noise of soldiers outside who laugh, eat, live while they wait to see who breaks first. 2 sisters begin to cry, but Sister Magdalena begins to recite a psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Then another, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And slowly, the crying stops. This is the moment when the Ottomans underestimated them. These women had spent their entire lives preparing for suffering. Fasts, vigils, cold. What the soldiers saw as torture, the nuns saw as discipline. But Hassan Pasha is patient. Faith is like a candle, he once wrote. It burns most intensely just before it goes out. On the 3rd day, the doors open again. An official speaks. You are not criminals. You are not enemies. The Sultan is merciful. He offers you new lives, new names, protection. All you must do is speak the words. Silence. Or you come with us to Constantinople. There the Sultan himself will hear your case. But the road is long, and the weak do not survive. Sister Eleni looks at her sisters. Some are barely conscious. Some pray with eyes closed. She turns back. We go. The smile returns. Good. We leave at dawn. That night, Sister Magdalena begins to hum softly. A hymn they sing at dawn. One by one, the others join. They leave at dawn. 23 women, hands tied with rope. They walk south toward the coast. No cart, no horse. Only their feet, the dust, and the merciless sun. The road itself is the punishment. On the 2nd day, Sister Irene is dying. At 62, her knees have been failing for years. The soldiers do not wait. Sister Magdalena and Sister Anna carry her for 3 miles. When they stop for the night, Irene is unconscious. In the morning, she is gone. They bury her with bare hands on the side of the road. Hassan Pasha makes a note. 22 remain. On the 4th day, Sister Callista simply stops walking. She sits in the middle of the road, closes her eyes, and does not rise again. When they reach the port of Volos 7 days later, only 18 remain. But on that road, something happened that the Ottomans did not expect. The sisters stopped crying, stopped begging. They walked in silence. But it was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of women who had already made their choice. On the morning of the 7th day, Hassan Pasha calls for Sister Eleni. She is brought alone into his tent. What happened next is described in a letter by a Venetian merchant discovered in 2003. I saw her when they brought her back at dawn. She could barely walk. Her eyes were open, but she was no longer inside them. They dressed her in silk and paraded her through the camp like a convert, but I heard her lips moving. She was still praying in Latin, in silence. They had not broken her. They had simply taken her body and let her soul wander. This is the Ottoman strategy that history does not teach you. They did not want martyrs. They wanted ghosts. Women who walked, talked, breathed, but would never be whole again. The living who proved that rebellion was useless. At the port, they are loaded onto a galley. A massive warship with rows of benches and chains. The nuns are chained to the benches, wrists locked with steel rings. A cargo manifest from the ship, discovered in 1987, lists them not by name, but by number. Religious prisoners, women, 18. Destination, Imperial Domestic Service and Conversion. The voyage lasts 12 days. The sea is not kind. Storms sweep the deck. Salt spray burns their lips. At night, Sister Magdalena whispers psalms, barely audible over the crashing waves. But the other prisoners, Greeks, Serbs, Italians chained beside them, turn their heads to listen. For a moment, the sea seems still. When the ship finally enters the Bosphorus, the sisters see Constantinople. Domes, minarets, walls that seem to stretch to infinity. The city gleams like a blade. For 11 centuries it had been called the city desired by the world. Now it would become their cage. From the dock, they march through narrow streets. People stop to watch. Christian nuns among the prisoners are a rarity. They are led beyond the ancient walls, through imperial gardens, and then into the shadow of Hagia Sophia. They are forced to stop, kneeling, while the call to prayer echoes from the minaret. One sister whispers, "We are home, but it is no longer ours. They are taken to the palace, but not to the great halls. They are led below, through stone corridors in darkness, through tunnels that smell of dampness and decay." Beneath Topkapi, there is a network of tunnels that tourists never see. Storage rooms, forgotten foundations nestled in the rock like veins, and in the farthest corner, sealed for centuries, a room with no official record. In 2011, during restoration work, archaeologists found a false wall. What they found there froze them. Carved into the stone, barely visible, were crosses. Dozens of them, small, crude, cut with nails or broken pottery. And beneath those crosses, carved in Latin, 4 words, "Lux in tenebris lucet." The light shines in the darkness. This was their chapel. For months, perhaps years, these women lived beneath the palace, working as silent servants. But at night, when the palace slept, they gathered in this forgotten room and prayed. They had no priests, no altars, no Bibles, only memory. They recited psalms from memory, half-forgotten hymns reshaped into prayers. They celebrated communion with bread stolen from kitchens and water from palace wells. And they carved faith into the stone, one scratch at a time, knowing that no one would ever see it. Sister Magdalena was among them. The girl who whispered psalms on the ship, who had carried Sister Irene on the road. Archaeologists found her mark, a small bird carved in the corner of the wall. Next to it, 23 lines, 1 for each sister. But only 11 were complete. They fashioned candles from pottery, a piece of linen for the altar. From a fragment of a broken plate they obtained a chalice. In this secret chapel they met every night. No hymns, no sermons, only whispers. Each woman knelt and shared a memory, her home, the bell of her church, the warmth of bread before dawn. These memories became their new psalms. A Venetian merchant held prisoner in the palace in 1478 wrote of strange voices echoing beneath the dungeons, women singing in Latin to a god who was not of this empire. For centuries, historians dismissed it as superstition until they found the chapel. But here is what breaks your heart. The crosses stop. Midway up the wall, the scratches become irregular. The lines deepen, as if carved with more force, more urgency. Then nothing more. Ottoman registers from 1482 mention a purification of palace staff. Anyone considered unproductive or resistant was removed. No details, no names, no burials. Just one line, eliminated. The Sisters of St. Catherine disappeared from history. The 18 women who had walked 7 days through hell, who had crossed the sea in chains, who had carved prayers into stone in the darkness, vanished. But their chapel remained. A French diplomat in 1712 wrote of a rumor that if you descended into the lowest dungeons, you could hear women singing in Latin. He dismissed it as superstition. But walls do not lie. In 2011, archaeologists found something else. Traces of wax, not from Ottoman candles, but from another source. More ancient, mixed with herbs. The type of candle that nuns made in convents. This means they resisted longer than anyone would have thought possible. Months, perhaps years. Meeting, whispering prayers, refusing to disappear. Sister Magdalena's bird was the last mark on the wall. Next to it, scratched so faintly it was almost invisible, 2 words in Greek. We resist. But they did not merely resist. They did something that empires could not erase, a room full of crosses, a prayer carved into stone, proof that faith could survive where walls and chains could not. The Ottoman Empire lasted until 1922, 600 years of conquest and power. But in the end it was those scratches on the wall that survived. Not the Sultan's decrees, not the careful records of the pashas, not the silk with which they dressed Sister Eleni. Only 4 Latin words carved by women the world forgot. Lux in tenebris lucet, the light shines in the darkness. So why is this story important? Because it is not about religion, it is not even about the Ottomans. It is about what happens when power tries to erase people, and what happens when those people refuse to disappear. The Ottoman Empire conquered 3 continents. They rewrote maps, languages, entire cultures. They transformed the greatest cathedral of Christendom into a mosque. but they could not erase 18 women who carved on stone. Think about it. An empire with armies, cannons, infinite will to reshape the world against women with nothing but nails and faith. And the women won. Not in the way empires measure victory. They did not reclaim their convent, they did not convert their captors, they did not live long enough to see freedom. But they left a mark. History is written by the victors, but memory is written by the survivors. And sometimes, survival looks like a cross carved in darkness, where no one should have seen it. These women lived in darkness. They walked for 7 days, knowing they might not survive. They crossed the sea in chains, knowing what awaited them. They descended into tunnels, knowing they might never see sunlight again. But they carved their prayers, trusting that one day someone would find them. You just did. When archaeologists entered that hidden chapel, one of them asked a question that haunts me. How long did they resist? The depth of some carvings suggests desperate, repeated work. This means these women met night after night, year after year, in absolute darkness. They refused to stop believing, even when sisters disappeared, even when hope should have died. They kept carving. This is not just faith. This is defiance in its purest form. The Ottoman Empire is no more. It dissolved in 1922. Its sultans are dust, its armies are memory. The palace still stands, but now it is a museum. Tourists walk through its halls unaware of what lies beneath their feet. But those crosses remain. And that Latin phrase, barely visible after 500 years, still speaks. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. Sister Magdalena spoke those words knowing she would never leave that palace. Knowing her name would be forgotten. Knowing the world would go on without her. But she spoke them anyway because she understood something that empires never understand. You can conquer lands, you can rewrite history, you can erase names from records and bury bodies in unmarked graves, but you cannot kill what people carry inside, and you cannot silence what they carve in stone. You have just witnessed one of the darkest moments in history. If stories like this remind you how fragile humanity is, how easily voices can be erased, then subscribe to the channel and keep the past alive. Because some voices deserve to be heard, even if they were silenced centuries ago, especially then. The sisters of St. Catherine were supposed to disappear. That was the plan. Break them, turn them into ghosts. But they did not disappear. They are still here, in those crosses, in that Latin, in the chapel that archaeologists found 500 years later. And now they are here with you, because you listened, because you remembered, because you refused to let their silence be the last word. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not win. If this story moved you, and you want to discover more forgotten truths from history, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with those who love history. Only through knowledge can we learn from the past. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next video.